I'm going to read this morning from the Gospel of John, John chapter 6, beginning verse 24 through 35. So when the crowd saw that neither Jesus nor his disciples were there, they themselves got into the boats and went to Capernaum looking for Jesus. When they found him on the other side of the sea, they said to him, "Rabbi, when did you come here?" Jesus answered them, "Very truly I tell you, you are looking for me not because you saw signs, but because you ate your fill of the loaves. Do not work for the food that perishes, but for the food that endures for eternal life, which the Son of Man will give you. For it is on him that God the Father has set his seal." Then they said to him, "What must we do to perform the works of God?" Jesus answered them, "This is the work of God, that you believe in him who he has sent." So they said to him, "What sign are you going to give us then, so that we may see it and believe you? What work are you performing? Our ancestors ate the manna in the wilderness, as it is written, he gave them bread from heaven to eat." Then Jesus said to them, "Very truly I tell you, it was not Moses who gave you the bread from heaven, but it is my Father who gives you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is that which comes down from heaven and gives life to the world." So they said to him, "Sir, give us this bread always." Jesus said to them, "I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never be hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty." This is the word of God for God's people. I know that many of you, like my family, you've been glued to the TV this week watching the Olympics, right? I mean, I was so excited this morning, badminton. Just can't get enough of competitive badminton. I do like watching some of the Olympic Games, and I will even watch badminton. It's interesting to see people who actually spend a lifetime being an Olympic athlete at a sport like badminton or handball or some of those other sports that we don't see every night on SportsCenter. While most of the attention is given to the gold medal winners, I always like to see who comes in afterwards and see their reaction. A lot of times it's a lot more interesting to see how they react, especially if the gold medal winner is somebody that's supposed to win. I mean, the silver medal winner usually looks disappointed, but the bronze medal winner, now there's somebody to watch, because usually they seem to be excited. I read somewhere where somebody did research on this, and they tried to say, okay, who has the most positive response? Obviously, the gold medal winner has the most positive response. They've won. Even if they're supposed to win, they're excited because they actually won. But the bronze medal winner is the next most positive, and the silver medal winner is last. They explained it this way: the silver medal winner sees himself as the first loser, but the bronze medal winner sees himself as the last winner. Kind of interesting. It all has to do with expectations. If Michael Phelps or the USA basketball team is expected to be the best and they win the gold, well, that's what's expected. But if you're somebody that nobody knows, if you just barely made the Olympic team, if you're from a country that's never won a medal before at all, and you win the bronze or the silver, you see the joy and the excitement in their life. Expectations play a big role in how we respond to life. That's what Jesus is dealing with today in John's Gospel. John 6 begins with the feeding of the 5,000. Jesus has the crowd in the palm of his hand. He did a great thing. He's got them all out there. They came to hear him preach, and then it got late in the day, remember? And they were way away from the town. They couldn't go and get supplies, and nobody had prepared to be out there that late. And so everybody was getting hungry. What are they going to do? And so then Jesus feeds the 5,000, with just a few loaves and the fish. And it's an amazing sight, and the people are astounded. Not only do they see this miracle, but they get a good meal out of it too. Now there's a win-win situation. They're ready to rally. They're ready to go with Jesus anywhere. They're ready to follow. I mean, you give somebody a good meal, they'll follow you. And they try to force him to be their king. But Jesus won't have any part of that. And so Jesus and the disciples begin to play a little game of hide and seek with the crowds. You know, he said, let's get away. We need to get away from all this. So they try to go across the river, but the crowds see him, and they get to the other side first. They find him. Then Jesus looks at them, and finally he just has to put them in their place. Okay, enough about the food, enough about a meal. You're not here because you saw signs in the kingdom. You're here just because I fed you. So let's get down to what we really need to be doing here. The people had certain expectations of Jesus and who Jesus was, what Jesus could do for them. When they were really hungry, when they were really in need, he feeds them because he has compassion on them. That's the kind of person Jesus is. And then they expect him to keep feeding them. Do more signs and more wonders. Keep on making us happy. Do what we expect of you. We saw you do something great. Now do something else. But if we know anything about Jesus, it's that he never does what we expect him to do. The people come again and they're looking for food. And so he says, well, I know you're looking for food. Let's be honest here. But let me tell you about my kingdom. And then he kind of goes off on this strange path in his talk. He said, you're looking for bread, but let me tell you, I am the bread of life. Feed on me. Follow me. You'll never be hungry and thirsty again. Well, the people can't handle it. They say, this teaching is too difficult. Now, the Greek word there doesn't mean that it's too difficult to understand, but it's too difficult to accept. Difficult because it doesn't meet their expectations. Difficult because it turns it back on them. Jesus could have said it this way. I could keep feeding you. I could keep taking care of you. And you wouldn't have to do anything. You'd have no responsibilities. But that's not the way that life works. That's not the way it works in my kingdom. When there is one who really is in need, yes, I'll take care of them. I'll give them something to eat. I'll find them something to wear. I'll help them in whatever way they need. But once the need is met, there's a choice to be made. Because I want you to become accountable. Will you follow me? Will you live my life? Will you live in my kingdom? And then he says, if so, then you're going to find life everlasting, complete and fulfilling life. I think that's what Jesus means when he says, I am the bread of life. Another place in John's Gospel, he puts it this way. He says, I will live in you and you will live in me. And here, living isn't just existing. It's not just somewhere that you stay. But it's actually a dwelling place. A home. I mean, you're setting that, you're putting down roots there. It's a place that's not just a place where we can live, but it's a place that gives us our identity. This is where I'm from. This is who I am. And the people complained, that's too hard for us to accept. That's too hard for us. Why? Well, because that's going to mean that we have to change something about our life. To follow you, we have to change something. We have to give up something of ourselves to follow you. One of the doctrines that we cling to as Christians is that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. That's from Hebrews chapter 13, and it's a good doctrine. It's good, something we ought to hold on to, and it's true. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. We hold on to it so tightly, though, because we don't like change. If this holds true, then maybe it means we don't have to change. If we can hold on to Jesus as the same yesterday, today, and forever, then that means once we accept that, and once we are following Jesus, okay, our life is set, we don't ever have to change again. But while God never changes, while Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever, we have to change. Our lives are constantly moving and growing and changing so that we can become more Christ-like. If we don't change, our life becomes stale and stagnant. There was a church whose identity they kind of modeled it around this passage we read today in John. Jesus is the bread of life. So they set out as their goal for living, that says we want to be the bread for the world. And so they kind of lived out that. They had a new preacher came into town, and he was appointed to this congregation. He loved the idea that they said of being bread for the world. And he noticed that there was a loaf of bread on the altar. And it looked plastic to him. But he went and he looked at it. He realized, no, it's a real loaf of bread, but it had been shellacked. You know? And so he was kind of puzzled by this, and so he went and asked somebody. He says, oh yeah, he said, back when we first adopted this as our kind of our mission, our vision of who we are as a church, be the bread for the world. He said, we decided, well, we want a symbol that reminds us every week of who we are. So there was a lady in our church, and she was so wonderful. Every Sunday morning she'd get up and make a fresh loaf of bread and put it on the altar. And then after, and so we all looked at that. We could remember we are the bread for the world. And then we'd take the bread and we'd give it to a shut-in or someone who was sick or a new person in the community. Whoever we could find that weekend, we'd take it to them. But she got older. She couldn't do it anymore. And it was hard to find anybody who would make the bread. And so we loved the idea of the symbol. It reminded us so much of who we are that we wanted that up there. So we baked a loaf of bread and we shellacked it and put it up there. Yeah, now it's all dusty and everything. Well, but from back there where we sit, you know, it still looks pretty good. You can't really hardly tell the difference. The next Sunday, the preacher got up and he preached on this very passage. He began to talk about Jesus as the bread of life. And how Jesus gave himself for the sake of others to be that bread. How it was his sacrifice that made the bread of life something worthwhile. Jesus as the bread is a symbol of Jesus on the cross. And he walked over to the altar and he picked up the loaf of bread, and everybody gasped because nobody had touched that bread. They said, put there, you know, that's a sacred symbol. And he held up that bread. And he said, Jesus is the bread of life, and he wants us to be the bread for the world. And he said, but look at this cross. Think about what we say at communion. He said, this is my body, broken for you. And he tore the bread in half. He says, unless the bread is broken, it doesn't do anybody any good. It was Jesus' sacrifice, his broken body, his broken bread, that gives us life. It's only when that bread can be shared that we can receive the life that it gives us. It's a life-giving and a life-saving qualities that would never be known to a world that's desperately needed this bread. What do we come here today expecting from Jesus? Did we come just to expect to be fed again? Because Jesus did such a great job, and we just want to soak in all that he has to give us? Or do we come ready to follow? Did we come ready to answer that question? Will you follow me? Will you be the bread for the world? Are you ready to be a part of God's kingdom? Jesus is the bread of life. And he calls us to take that bread and to share it with others. As we come to the table this morning, come ready to receive all that God has given us in Jesus Christ. And come ready to share with others all of the love and grace and the life that we have received.